Hello, welcome to Walk in the Park. My name is Tony Ingraham, and this is our 140th episode on June 15th, 2016. And if you want to see all of our shows, all of my shows, Walk in the Park, walkinthepark.tv is my website. So you can go there and actually see this show if you want to see it again, or someone hasn't been able to see it because they don't happen to have a TV connection, or they don't live in Ithaca, blah, blah, blah. And this will be put up on the website probably by the 16th, and that's when it'll first show on June 16th at 9 p.m. on Channel 13 in Ithaca, New York, Pegasus Public Access Television. This week we're going to go on the Cayuga Trail and along Fall Creek, and you may or may not know that trail. And we're also going to go a number of other places, including a couple of different spots in Buttermilk Falls State Park. We're going to maybe make it to Watkins Glen, to Cayuga Falls, various places. So we'll see how much time we have and where we get to all these different locations. So we're going to start off by going out along Fall Creek. And this is a map showing the Cayuga Trail. You can see the label down to the right, perhaps. And there's an arrow pointing to a place that you can get access to the trail. You see that orangish, yellowish squiggle going through diagonally through the map, east from the Cornell Campus, which is on the left-hand side of the map, and going up to the town of Dryden on the right. And that designates the Cayuga Trail, which is a hiking trail approximately 8.5 miles long through the Cornell University campus, Cornell Plantations Gardens and Arboretum areas, and through several Cornell Plantations Natural Areas. It follows the Fall Creek Gorge from the Cornell campus east into the town of Dryden. Well, up along Freese Road, which is the road that crosses Fall Creek there. Fall Creek's a little hard to see in that picture, but there is this is where that arrow was pointing. This is the Cornell Community Garden Plots, which also has a little parking lot and gives access to a portion of the Cayuga Trail. So Cornell Garden Plots describes itself as saying they are available for rent to anyone who wishes to grow their own vegetables and flowers. Our gardens are located on Freese Road off of Hanshaw Road and are assigned on a first-come, first-served basis. So Freese Road runs between Hanshaw Road on the north and Route 366 Dryden Road in Varna on the south. That's showing on that map there. So it's pretty accessible. Here's just going into the woods where you can get access to the trail. The trail, as it said, runs 8.5 miles. I'm not going to do that much at all, maybe a half a mile in here. But the trail markers are orange. Those orange paint marks, or blazes, they're sometimes called. And that double paint mark indicates a turn in the trail. So above that is a diamond-shaped thing there, and that is a Cornell Plantations Natural Area emblem there. And then, of course, there are some symbols saying don't ride your bikes or horses on this trail because they'll mess them up, tear up the ground. And it's also a little dangerous because there are cliffs along there. There are high bluffs that you'll see pictures of shortly. So I have this picture here to show that sign, but also the size of some of the trees that grow right along the edge. You'll find along our gorges and similar locations that you often have large trees growing because the farmers cleared the land right up to the edge of the gorge, and then trees grew up from there, and they were not maybe easily logged from there. Perhaps they would fall down into the gorge. They couldn't get around them or whatever. But in any case, along the edge of many of our gorges, there are some very old trees, very big trees. Also, when they are cleared out, when the forest is cleared out around them, they grow much more quickly and get a lot larger. So that the trail runs along these bluffs. Bluffs are made of clay and silt and gravel and so forth. There are a lot of clay deposits there, and there's it's a glacial deposit of some sort, and makes very dramatic landscape, but also a little tricky. Now, if you've been up to Chimney Bluff State Park on Lake Ontario in Wayne County, you see a similar landscape there where the lake is pounding into the base of what they call drumlins that are made of similar material and creating a landscape like this. In this case, the outward bend of Fall Creek is eroding into this hillside that's made up of this compacted glacial clay. So We're going to, this is a view over towards Mount Pleasant, which forms the southern side of the Fall Creek Valley there. And Mount Pleasant is east of Cornell. So I'm going to show you a little video that I made from that walk, and it'll take maybe about 2 or 3 minutes. So I'll bring that up now. Okay, so you can see that's a pretty scenic area, and if you want to really experience Fall Creek, at least in its section that's closer to Ithaca, you can take the Cayuga Trail. You can walk all the way from down the gorge in the Cornell Campus out to out into the countryside among farms and so forth along the Cayuga Trail. Among those Cornell Plantations, much of the area is in Cornell Plantations Natural Areas, and if you go on their website and look at the various natural areas, there's several of them that apply to the Fall Creek Cayuga Trail area, and they'll tell you a bit about the forest types and ecology of the area too. So it's pretty nice. And also, if you get the Guide to the Trails of the Finger Lakes region by Cayuga Trails Club, I don't have it with me to show you this time, but they have more information. So now we're going to go over to Buttermilk Falls State Park, and we're going to look at a couple of wildflowers very briefly. I have a short online web video series called Glimpse of Nature, which generally only lasts about 12 to 15 seconds, although I think they're going to get longer. Some of them are longer. But there is a, well, let's just go take a look at this one. This is above Buttermilk Falls. So, on a cliff top above Buttermilk Falls, moss phlox blooms every spring. So hey, that's very short. That's just a glimpse. And moss phlox is actually a lot of people plant it in their rock gardens and on banks along the road. But it is a native plant. I'm sure there are cultivars that are a little bit different, but there were two different colors there. Actually, there was one patch that I didn't focus on, which was white, and then that one happened to be pink. I don't know if anybody intervened and put some of the cultivated varieties of our native plant there on that cliff top. But every spring, I see that. Every May, I see that top of that cliff bloom with moss phlox. They call it moss phlox. It is a kind of phlox. It has 5 petals, which phlox has. Something around blooming now called Dame's rocket, which looks a lot like phlox, but it only has 4 petals, and it's in the mustard family. They call it moss phlox because it has very thin leaves, almost moss-like leaves, and can live in very dry, sunny, exposed locations. So well-drained, sort of xeric environments. So that's kind of cool. Now we're going to look at another woodland flower, which is mostly done now, but it's in pretty much the second half of May into early June, called wild geranium, another glimpse of nature. This is on the trail that goes around the little lake in Upper Buttermilk Falls State Park called Lake Treman, so it's the Lake Treman Trail. Just a short glimpse of nature again. Wild geranium blooms in spring along a trail in Buttermilk Falls State Park in New York's Finger Lakes region. There you go, wild geranium. So there might be some of that still out there. You can go take a look, or maybe you've noticed it. But very pretty flower. It's sort of in the succession when the trillium or kind of at the end, the wild geranium is coming out. No, now we're going to go another section of Buttermilk Falls State Park, south of Ithaca. Now this is a map. At the very top of it, you can see Ithaca labeled there, and then South Hill, and then Danby, and there's a pond down there called Jennings Pond. Now running north to the top of the map from Jennings Pond is Buttermilk Creek, which, if you look at where it says South Hill, just to the left of there a bit, on the edge of the valley, there's a green area. That's Buttermilk Falls State Park, and the associated forest, that's where the gorge is. So the Buttermilk Creek runs from Jennings Pond up through the farmlands and fields and woods to the gorge, to the waterfall of Buttermilk Falls State Park at Buttermilk Falls. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit here on Google Earth. There's Jennings Pond. Up to the right there, you can see the village of Danby, and that's Route 96B, which runs south to into Tioga County and Candor and so forth. And actually, right there in the village of Danby, the hamlet, that is on the divide between the north-flowing and south-flowing drainages. That the north-flowing drainage goes into Cayuga Lake, And the south flowing drainage from Danby Creek, goes south and eventually into the Susquehanna River and the Chesapeake Bay, whereas our water in Ithaca and the water in Jennings Pond and Buttermilk Creek right there flows north, eventually making its way to Lake Ontario and the St. Lawrence River. So right there in Danby, you're sitting on the divide between two major river systems, the Susquehanna Chesapeake system and the Great Lakes St. Lawrence system. But we're going to look at something a little more subtle, which is just a little more local, and is some wildlife. Maybe we'll see how it looks on here. We're going to look at a heron. Can you see the heron in the middle of this picture? Well, he's going to come to life in a minute, and he's going to have breakfast. At Jennings Pond, an outlying section of Buttermilk Falls State Park, at the headwaters of Buttermilk Creek, which eventually makes its way to the falls, a great blue heron catches a fish for breakfast on the far side of the pond. So that was a Saturday morning, late May, the last Saturday in May, May 28th. You notice how I swallowed that fish whole. It might have been a little bluegill or something. It's very hard. That was a long shot with my zoom lens on my camera across the pond, all the way across. So I didn't know how well that turned out, but you could see it. And you notice it took a couple of drinks of water after it had swallowed that fish. So the fish, I guess, ended its awareness inside the heron. Now we're going to go down to Cayuga Lake, and we won't have any videos for a little while here. It's mostly going to be stills. But this was the other day. I went down there and just sat on the shore, and it was a windy day blowing in my face, and that was kind of nice. But in previous episode 139, called Hydrilla Godzilla, we talked about the threat of this very aggressive, invasive aquatic weed called hydrilla, which was discovered almost 5 years ago by the Cayuga Lake Floating Classroom in this location right here, which is the water at the mouth of Cascadilla Creek, which is in the back of this picture coming into Cayuga Inlet, and the picture is taken right next to the Ithaca Farmers Market dock. So that's all hydrilla, which hadn't been seen before in much of New York State and not in the Finger Lakes, and it was found. This one's from there, but this is what hydrilla looks like. And it grows very rapidly, and it can quickly take over a water body. It can grow 25 to 30 feet long, maybe an inch a day or so, and potentially fill up Cayuga Inlet and all the shallow areas of Cayuga Lake and the Erie Canal and so forth. Some states like Florida they've given up on trying to control it, and they merely spend maybe $25-30 million a year just cutting ways through the hydrilla weed to get access to boating lanes and what have you, and docks. So there's been a big response. We covered this a whole lot in the last episode, but just to review, a multi-agency organizational consortium was created called the Hydrilla Task Force, and you can go see them at stophydrilla.org, O-R-G, stophydrilla.org. And hydrilla hunter volunteers have been recruited and trained to go out and find the hydrilla and report on it, and then it can be dealt with. And there's a lot of survey work going on This is actually in the southeast corner of Cayuga Lake. Some of it got out of Cayuga Inlet and into Fall Creek area, and this is the south. This is by Stewart Park, where some patches of hydrilla were found. I think this is a couple of years ago, and they actually cordoned them off and dug it all out, and they put down something called benthic mats, which will cover the bottom of the lake and suppress this weed growth. So in the Ithaca Festival, the Cayuga Lake Watershed Network, the Stop Hydrilla Task Force, and the Cayuga Lake Floating Classroom, and probably some other groups got together and had a procession in the Ithaca Festival Parade, and they asked me to do a repeat performance. I'd done this 4 years ago, 2012 parade, as the Hydrilla Monster, or as Hillary Lambert of the Cayuga Lake Watershed Network likes to call me, the Hydrilla Godzilla. And I borrowed a bullhorn from the state parks and sang songs and told people about hydrilla, and generally terrified the populace, I'm told. And so we were in a white BMW convertible that somebody drove for us, and we had some hydrilla heroes in there, people who have spread the word about hydrilla all up and down to lake shore owners. And you can see the big banner for the big poster for the Cayuga Lake Watershed Network, and also behind them the Cayuga Lake Floating Classroom, which the Cayuga Lake Floating Classroom, they were the people that actually discovered it in Cayuga Inlet. So here's another picture here. Now you look at there's a fellow between you and the car there, and he's in a tiny cardboard canoe, and that is a let's see, let me pull this up, description of this, what's going on there. I have it on my tablet. There's going to be an event on September 11th. The Cayuga Lake Watershed Network is organizing the Can You Canoe Cayuga 2016, Sunday, September 11th, 2016. The 5th annual run of our signature paddling event will be held on that day. So any kind of paddling boat can do it. Kayaks. Here is a let's see what further they say. People, this is all from last year, this picture and the next few pictures. People in kayaks, canoes, and balanced SUPs, never heard of that term, stand-up paddleboards, will be paddling a revised Southern Loop path starting and ending at Stewart Park, where the after party will take place. But there'll be people all over the lake. This is a, what do you call it, an outrigger canoe with a bunch of people in it, somewhere up the lake. Some people will actually be trying to paddle the entire lake, but they'll be starting all over the place. Here's some folks starting, I believe, starting out for Ithaca from Cayuga Falls State Park. There's the swimming float there on the left, so they're kayaking down. And here's some folks last year that I don't know how far they went, but they got all the way down. This is at Cass Park, where they finally ended their and celebrated their canoeing Cayuga. So let's see, there's more information. Live music and food trucks will make for fun at the after event party, and challenging individual and family friendly event. Registration and details available soon. Be sure to check back. CayugaLake.org, CayugaLake.org, or just, the Cayuga Lake Watershed Network. Just Google that and you can get it. So I have one little picture here that I took off a website that was put up by Bill Heck. Some of you may know Bill Heck. I use his photographs, his historic photographs and his aerial photographs a lot in this show. And he had a whole collection of pictures of the most famous steamboat that ever ran on Cayuga Lake, which was the steamer Frontenac. It was also the last large steamboat to run on the lake. So this is just one of the pictures. Someday maybe I'll do a whole segment on the steamer Frontenac and some of the other steamers as well. But this one was, I think it's like 150 feet long, 25 feet wide, and can hold something like 350 passengers. And it would dock down at the old pier that used to be at what's now Stewart Park, at Renwick Pier, and also even in Cayuga Inlet at Steamboat Landing, where the Ithaca Farmers Market is now. But now we're going to hop out of the Cayuga Lake Basin, outside the Cayuga Lake Watershed, and go over to Watkins Glen State Park and have another glimpse of nature to show you here. So let's go do that. There's a little advertisement there for my book about Watkins Glen State Park. So if you want to find out about that, you can go to my website, owlgorge.com. So Cavern Cascade is one of the two waterfalls you can walk behind in Watkins Glen. Here's the other one. This is called Rainbow Falls. And if you've been over there, these are probably two of the spots that you may remember the most. And I've got another little video, which is sort of some wording at the very beginning, the introduction of my book about Watkins Glen State Park. So let's get that up. The ravine called Watkins Glen is cut into the steep hillside on the west flank of the Seneca Lake Valley. It is a beautiful break in the skin of the earth, where a stream has sliced through hundreds of feet of ancient rock layers. For thousands of years, Glen Creek has roared and whispered through its confines, slowly deepening the rugged throat of rock and shaping its ledges, pools, and waterfalls. Water created Watkins Glen. Water is a stream that eroded the gorge. Water is Ice Age glaciers that bored the Seneca Lake Valley and changed the course of Glen Creek. And water in an ancient sea where sand and mud settled on the bottom, eventually to harden and become the very rocks the gorge is cut into. The magic of water and its works are what have brought people to the Glen, whether to harness water power for mills in the 1800s or to walk behind a waterfall in the 21st century. Okay, well, that's all we have time for today, and I'll bring you more. I had some other historic photographs from Watkins Glen and so forth, but I can share those another time. They'll be just as relevant later. So we'll go I'll do one of those historic photographs. Yeah, this is actually from Teganic, but we'll explain that some other time while we get ready to go here.